Welcome back, viewers and listeners, to another episode of Across the Pond podcast with Martin and I, Lindsey Stroud at the Taxpayers Protection Alliance's Consumer Center. Today, we're so fortunate to get this guest, actually, because he's a busy man. It's state legislative session time. And in case y'all don't know, it's like college freshman week or college finals week, actually, and how crazy it goes. But we have Montana State Representative Ron Marshall, who also is a vape shop owner with him and his wife Deanna own two vape shops, and it's actually kind of how he got involved with politics, dealing with local, state, federal, now the court system. So, Ron, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I
Yes, thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Yes, I know, and I know you're super busy, and I know we won't keep you super long. And viewers, sorry about his he's up in the mountains in Montana, so away from the state capital. So
Yeah,
he might be a little bit spotty. But Ron, if you're representative, if you don't mind, can you just give our viewers a little bit of an introduction to yourself and kind of how you got involved with vaping, and then also how you got involved with state politics?
sure. Well, back in the day, I was in the military for about 14 years. Got out, came back to Montana, and I met my wife, and did various adventures up here. I was a heavy equipment operator, worked on a few of the cattle ranches up here for a while, and started driving semis, and then working over in the oil fields. And it was about that I'm going to say 2012, somewhere in there, 2013. Deanna had a respiratory infection. Somebody suggested using an e-cigarette. We're like, okay, whatever that is, and found one. And it actually helped her to the point of where she didn't want to smoke anymore. And I said, well, if she can do it, I can do it. So both of us ended up using these products and quitting. And then you're looking for the next best thing. And she did a bunch of research on it and everything. And next thing I know, she's got these better products online, but you couldn't find it anywhere. I mean, we're in Montana, and it's like, geez, what do? The only thing you had is the internet. So it just came about one night. It's like, hey, let's just open a shop and see if we can do this. And pretty much with a bootstrapping budget of about $3,000, we opened our first shop, and it took off. Well, now this is where the politics comes in. Late one night, and on a November night, I got a phone call from an advocate lobbyist up in Helena, who said that there was a bill coming that would affect our industry. And I'm like, okay. Never wanted to get into politics after coming out of the military. Of course, politics sucks. So I took his call and spent about an hour on the phone with him. The next thing you know, we started passing the word around all the other shops that we knew of and said, hey, we need to go up there because they're going to try to shut our business down or curtail it. So that was 2015. That was my first dive into being involved directly in politics. And of course, the rest of the story is, if you build a business, they will come. Well, they surely came. So we kept dealing with that. Then Deanna and I actually went out and participated in the OMB FDA meetings in DC on the deeming regs. So we made a few trips back and forth to DC, back and forth to Helena every 2 years. And so finally it got to the point of I told, you can't, it's hard to, you don't want to pay for a lobbyist. And because they're expensive. So we spent a lot of time up there, weeks at a time, walking the hallways, getting to know legislators, talking to them, trying to do it on our own. And finally, the representative from my district here was termed out. And I said, you know what, I'm going to run for her seat. Here I am. This is my third session now up there. And, the lobbyists really kind of hate it because now I'm behind the curtain. I'm in areas where they can't go, and I get to talk to legislators one-on-one. And that to me is the best benefit because they hear things from people in the hallways and whatnot. But when you can sit down one-on-one with them, suddenly it's like, well, wait a minute, I didn't know that. Well, of course you didn't know that. They didn't want you to know that. So it's been a challenge. And now this session has really been and interesting.
So I wasn't able to do, sorry, it's been crazy for me. Do you have any committee chairmanships or anything?
Yes, I do. Actually, business and labor. I'm one of the senior members on business and labor. I'm not the vice chair, the chair, but that's one of my favorite committees. And I strategically, well, I liked it as a business owner. I understand a lot of things. There's a lot of stuff that comes through business and labor. Um, I mean, we hear everything in there from vaping bills to right to work, insurance, business policy, wages, that kind of stuff. But I strategically put myself on the Health and Human Services Committee, and now I'm chairman of Health and Human Services. And so any tobacco related bill that's not taxes, tobacco taxes, comes through either business and labor or through HHS. So it's kind of a strategic placement on my part.
Okay, and we won't keep it too much with politics, but I'm always curious about it since I have to work on the other side of the aisle, but not as a lobbyist, more as a researcher. I guess in, a 2 minute things like where's the most surprising thing that you saw going to Helena, being now going on that other side of the aisle, behind the scenes, and yeah, what's the most surprising thing, and then what's been the most frustrating thing?
The most surprising thing is how I'm not going to say, I don't want to degrade anybody, but it's like the surprising thing is how many people are there that don't know the process. I don't want to say ignorant. It's kind of almost, I put it into three categories. You have people there who want to be the socialites. You have people who are after just power, but then you have a slim margin in the middle who are actually there to do the work of the people, is to get something done and do something positive. And I'm not a power seeker. I could care less about that. Being chairman was, to me, is like, okay, it's a position, but with that position comes, yeah, you got some power, but it's a lot of responsibility. But the socialites up there, I mean, there's people up there who don't know how the process goes to write a bill. I mean, it's like, okay, next. But no, that's the surprising, probably the frustrating part of it. The best part is learning that it's not that hard to steer a bill. I mean, if you want to put a particular bill into a particular committee, there's a way to do it, and it's not outside the law. It's not anything new. It just happens to be moving a couple of words or, adding, a monetary value to it. If it's only $1, how to introduce a bill later behind a deadline. Yeah, I mean, so there's just surprising things behind the curtain that most people don't know about.
Okay, yeah. Martin, do you have anything to ask?
Yeah, I made a couple of notes straight away, actually. Nice to meet you, Ron. I'm Martin.
Nice to meet you.
I live in South London in the UK. But things that you mentioned there struck me because just a few days ago, the New Nicotine Alliance in the UK, which is a group that was formed when vaping was being attacked by the European Union over here, that was vapers getting into politics. Because they felt they had to. So it was interesting hearing your story because you thought, well, and secondly, you're running a vape shop and we hear at the moment so many people talking about vape shop owners as if they're somehow a problem, as if they're almost like, I mean, during the committee stage of the tobacco and vapes bill we've got going through over here at the moment, one of the guys was giving evidence, and he's a vaping industry person, but never made a single cigarette, and they called him the new Marlboro Man. And yet the vast majority of shops that I know are like you, they're independent shops where people who quit smoking using vaping think I can help someone else with this. And yet we've got last week or a couple of weeks ago, one of the MPs called them vape peddlers. I mean, this whole attitude that legislators and lawmakers have got now, that somehow vaping is a problem and is people trying to sort of drive people off the rails and attack kids and everything. It can't be more wrong, can it, Ron? I mean, it's exactly what you said. You're trying to help other people.
Exactly. And you hit the nail on the head because we've been called that here. child predators. I mean, you're targeting kids. It's the children that they hide behind the children. They'll put the children out front and hide behind them. And we all know, I've been to the Middle East and I know who puts kids in front of themselves to protect their own interest. But the nail on the head is they're demonizing vaping. Well, one of my key phrases is follow the money. So over here, one of the benefits of being chair of HHS is I get to sit in on budget meetings. Our budget's broken down into sections. We call them A through F. Section B deals with the DPHHS, or Department of Health and Human Services budget, which is about half of we have about a $12 billion a year budget for 1.1 million people in the state of Montana. Half of that budget goes to Section B. And all I've heard about in the last 3 weeks is the smoking rates here in the United States are dropping, the vaping rates are increasing, and the lack of money. They're losing money not only on cigarette taxes, but they're losing money on the MSA. And the programs that they have funded through that tax are now in trouble. Veterans nursing homes losing $2.5 million a year off of cigarette taxes. There's some other Medicaid taxes that or Medicaid programs that the taxes are affecting, along with the MSA, the Master Settlement Agreement payments. So, I mean, that's all I've heard is vaping's bad, but yet, oh my gosh, people are quitting smoking. You should be rejoicing in that. Instead, they're like, well, how do we beat these guys up? How do we pound on them? And we've been called big tobacco. And I mean, I've always asked when somebody said that, my retort's always been, where's my check from RJ Reynolds or Altria? Because I yet to see one. I haven't seen one yet. But now the surprising thing is, after filing this suit, suddenly it's like I have Democrats going over and going, hey, I saw your suit, good job. And it's like, yeah, see, so it's all of a sudden it's put that knife edge in there and it's starting to separate. It's like, yeah, we're not big tobacco. I mean, I hate big tobacco just as much as anybody, but being associated with them, and that's the usual body parts people doing that. You got heart, lung cancer, those guys who, and they make money off of people smoking. And I mean, I've found the buried treasure. And I'm fixing to rain on somebody's parade here real soon, because I have a bill I just introduced, and it's probably going to be heard next week. I'm going after their master settlement money, because that's been being dished out through the back door to these NGOs. So they're about to have an issue.
Yep, I was going to actually ask you about that. I know you've introduced a lot of legislation, or several bills, this 2025 legislative session, and then you also have that lawsuit. Can you kind of explain to our listeners and viewers what those all do? And feel free to throw out the bill numbers and everything.
Sure. So House Bill 149, and this actually goes back to, it involves, if you're familiar with the Triton White Line case that went to the Supreme Court and was argued in December, and then following down, that was taken up, I believe the Supreme Court certed that 3 days after they dropped the Chevron decision. Well, how ironic that they take the White Lion case up, or Triton, 3 days after Chevron, because it's a classic Chevron case. So in the beginning of the bill, I cite the White Lion Triton case. I cite the Loper case, which was Chevron. And then down below that, it kind of puts it all together and says, if the Supreme Court sides and takes the position of Loper with Triton, it's going to create a regulatory vacuum, which means that the FDA could possibly lose all regulatory control currently that they have with e-cigarettes and alternative nicotine products, meaning this regulatory bill and all that stuff that Altria is passing around is going to be gone. Well, the federal government said, well, you can't, they're going to class Demas as a tobacco product 21 and over. Well, that would take the age restriction off of selling, any of the alternative nicotine products. So it would leave the age gap wide open. So what this bill did is it's separating alternative nicotine products in Montana from tobacco products, created its own section in the Montana Code Annotated, or MCA as we call it. And so nothing would really change. The licensing was still the same. All the not selling to minors. Our constitution in Montana says 21 for alcohol and marijuana. Everything else is 18. So I put that age cap in there. So it's 18, which is what we've always, most all the shops in Montana agreed to that in 2015. And they're saying, well, I'm trying to lower the age limit. And that's a fight for another day, but I can't write anything above outside the Montana Constitution. And a lot of these lawmakers up here, that's another frustration. They don't understand that. It's like, read your Constitution before you swear to it. Anyway, it's an argument for another day. But so what the bill did is split that. And it's kind of like building a house, 4 walls and a roof on top, so that if that did happen, you wouldn't have 12-year-olds walking down the street vaping again. So it's basically it's a fallback position. So to keep it from going to the Wild West. So that was the bill in question. Now, what I found out and subsequently discovered was that the tobacco companies were running around with their lobbyists fighting against my bill. And I'm like, you guys are nuts. Well, they want to introduce the Altria bill, as I call it, but it's that registry bill that we've seen go across the country in the last 2 years. They're pushing that. And I got a heads up on that helps to have the Speaker of the House as a pretty close ally. And so I got the heads up on that. And when I discovered that, they're lobbying against my bill, it's like, okay, fight fire with fire. Consequently, there's a few bills coming that they're really not going to like. But I was doing some research a couple of Sundays ago, because I do go to the Capitol on the weekends occasionally, and because it's nice and quiet and I can get a lot of work done. I'm sitting in my office and I just happened to hit a keystroke on MSA because I'm looking at MSA funding, and the Attorney General's site pops up and I see the MSA provisions and I'm like, So I'm going to scroll through this. I get down about the 3rd page and I see in that provision that there's a block in there for lobbying, what they can and can't do. Well, they basically can't touch anything except taxes. If there's a cigarette tax or something, they can lobby on that. But anything that benefits at the state, local, county level, they're not allowed to even harp on. And then they're also supposed to, any tobacco lobbyist is supposed to read the provisions, sign a certified letter saying that they have read and understood these provisions and will abide by them. Okay, well, I'm looking at it going, okay, well, I talked to our Commissioner of Political Practices, who all lobbyists and candidates have to file all your paperwork, your expense and finance reports, everything goes through that agency. He had no clue what I was talking about. I'm talking to the commissioner. He doesn't know what I'm talking about. So I'm like, okay, now what? So I printed that off. I took it up to the speaker and I said, hey, we have a issue here. And he pretty much did the same thing I did. And it was a oh crap moment. And once he notified the one tobacco lobbyist what was going on, he literally blew up at me. He cussed me out. And it's just like, hey, man, I'm not the one that broke the law. So at that point, the next night, I got wind that he was at a dinner with a couple of senators and some representatives, again, downplaying my bill, saying it was bad, we got to kill it and all that. I instantly on the phone with Greg Troutman, and I said, let's barbecue these guys. I'm done with it. They're violating the MSA. He dug into it, and boom, here we are. So not this Monday, a week from Monday, we'll be in court up here in Missoula, and hopefully we'll get the injunction, the temporary injunction passed. We have some evidence. I've got them on the record clear back to 2015, violating the provisions of the MSA. and we're going after 3 counts in violations, and that should effectively lock them, damn near lock them out of the Capitol. And so, yeah, it's a little bit of headline news in the Capitol. I got a few people just, I've got people really upset with me, and I've got people just patting me on the back going, yeah, buddy. So it's interesting.
No, it always gets interesting in this. It never ceases to amaze me. I mean, you've been doing this longer than I have, but I kind of got thrown into vaping in like 2016, and it's just never ending. It just seems like, and the amount of misinformation. Uh, what is the situation going to be like? Like, I mean, I know you're waiting for that. Is there any other pressing legislation in Montana that we should be, worried about?
Well, I talked to the speaker. My 149 cleared out a committee, and I've had it stalled. It's not stalled. I pulled it off of the board, we call it, to go to the body of the House. So I'm going to pull that back out and put it on the floor next week. I'm going to just run with this thing, because now the word's out. If my bill fails, I'm going to point the finger back at you guys. So I'm basically saying to them, you better hope my bill doesn't fail, because it's not going to look good in court. And then I've got the MSA bill I just dropped. I'm planning on doing that one in committee on Thursday. And I'll let this cat out of the bag. I've already amended it because I ran it last year, and I had all the body parts people coming in there, and it's moving money. That's all it's doing. It's moving master settlement money around. And I heard everything from, well, this program's going to be affected to, my cat died because it had a stroke from somebody vaping around it. I mean, okay, they bring the kids in there. I mean, you're the devil, and you pack the hearing room, and it's like, and I like my bills. A lot of my bills do that. I draw a crowd, but I'm going to let them do that again this session. But what they don't know is I'm bringing an amendment to just move that money around. I'm not going to kill the programs. I'm going after the Montana Tobacco Use Prevention Program. These people are spending close to $7.5 million a year in the state of Montana to tell people, hey, you know what? It's bad to smoke. That's your heart, lung cancer. That's all those guys are getting money to run this little coalition. And it's like, no, that money was originally intended to pay for people's healthcare related costs because of smoking. So no, I'm going to twist that around, but I'm not going to let them know that till after the hearing. So my amendment will come after they just got done wasting their time. Then I'm going to drop the amendment on the committee. And I think that's going to probably put them up against the wall and go, you never saw that one coming. So that's one of them. The other one is we have what we call placeholders for bills. So if you have a bill subject or something that you may or may not want, you put it in the system. You never have to write the bill, but you have that topic in there. I pulled one last week for revising the taxes on cigarettes only. And they haven't raised the cigarette tax in Montana since 2003. It's $1.70 a pack. And I said, okay, well, Big Tobacco wants to mess around. Let's mess around. Let's play. So I pulled that bill out. I put $1 increase on cigarette taxes on it, and I'm going to have a Democrat carry it. So there you go. All I need to do is
I will be fighting that bill with you against you, right? So just an FYI, I will be submitting testimony against it.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, no, that's fine. It's the proverbial hot poke, to them. And so be forewarned. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be kind of wild, but no, I just want, I'm going to give those guys a hobby. I think between the U.S. District Court up here, a tax increase bill over here, and then the body parts groups fighting over the master settlement money, they're going to have a pretty busy week and a half, 2 weeks. So that'll give them a hobby, keep them off my back. And that's the plan. So that's the plan.
The MSA bill, there's so much that rings a bell with me with that, because if you A lot of the public will say to people in tobacco control, they say, but the taxes on cigarettes, they pay for themselves. Smokers are paying more tax than they cost the government. And they always say, no, 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 that's not the case, because smoking really, really costs a lot of money and it's much more than the tax. But then when you sort of say, when people start giving up smoking in their droves, then they start screaming, well, surely they should be happy. Because if it costs the
Yeah.
country so much money, they must be ecstatic because they're saving so much money. And yet we've had the same thing over here. The first thing they started saying was, "Oh, the government stop funding stop smoking services," and the government's saying, "Well, we don't need them because everyone's quitting using vaping." And the
Right.
following was amazing. So, is it that tobacco taxes do bring up more money than quitting smoking, or is quitting smoking a really good thing? You can't have it both ways. You've got to choose one or the other. You can't scream one thing and then the other at the same time.
E- Exactly. So I don't have it with me. It's on my desk. But I've got the breakdown of the tax money and the top. So as a veteran and having the veterans nursing homes, I've increased our funding on that with the cigarette tax money. But you got to look at, okay, what little piggies down the trough are feeding off of that money? Who's going to scream the loudest when you start taking money and putting it where it's going to do the most good? Because veterans, I know in the UK, having served in the military and been to the UK and trained with the British military and everybody in the military back in my day, you went in, if you didn't smoke, drink, and fight, I mean, they'd send you over to the Air Force or something. Um, but so the veterans have an unusually high amount of smoking rates, huge. So consequently, the health consequences, the healthcare costs are increased there as well. And you're right. I did the numbers, and in the last 2 years, Montana has lost $16.3 million in cigarette taxes, and I'm seeing it in the Section B meetings. And they're like, "Oh my God, these programs are going to start failing. We have to dip into the general fund." And then I started looking into it more. There's a huge chunk of money that goes to Medicaid, Medicare stuff, or for the CMS waivers and all that. And then there's another big chunk, like 22 million, that goes into the general fund, and they're whining because they're going to have to take money from the general fund to make up this cost. And it's like, well, wait a minute, that's where the money came from in the first place. So, I mean, you start getting into the appropriations committee and all these number crunchers and the bean counters and all these guys, and it's almost like it's like they're sticking a crowbar into their own wallet. It's like, listen, wait a minute, and then they want to fight over the MSA money, which is a direct payment from the tobacco company. This is not a tax. This is a direct payment from the tobacco companies. Yes, it's the taxpayer money. Once it hits the coffer, I consider it taxpayer money, but they act like you're trying to take money away from their little pet projects. And it's like, no, this is the hidden secret about government. There's enough money rolling around in the government. I think we're starting to see this at the federal level, that you don't need to increase taxes. You don't need to charge more for stuff. I mean, the money's there already. It's how much is being wasted. Can you take that money and put it to a good use? And the healthcare costs right now, that's a huge deal. Medicaid expansion was we got a bill going through up there right now to continue that. And everybody says, well, it's good for Montana because the federal government pays 90% of it. I'm like, hey, you jackwagons, you know what? Your income tax money you send to the federal government, that's your money still. It's like the federal government money comes from a different tree. No, that's your money. But these healthcare advocates should be dancing, going, hey, the smoking rates are at the lowest rate they've ever been. The health-related illnesses are dropping from smoking. But they want to demonize it. It's like this is the proverbial, the circular firing squad. We got to have people quit smoking. We got to demonize anything that helps them quit smoking because we need the money. It's insane. It's really insane, and sometimes very tiring because some of these people you sit there and line it out for them, and they just fail. They don't want to hear it. They fail to understand it. They don't want to hear it. You know, you're talking gibberish. Okay, whatever. You know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, gentlemen, we are getting towards the end of our time together. And I always try to end it on a positive note. So, Representative Marshall, do you have any thoughts on the future? Is there a glimmer of hope for, tobacco harm reduction and adults who smoke?
I think there is. I think that the one positive thing I want to see out of this lawsuit is that this rolls the wave back over the top of big tobacco and exposes what they were supposed to be doing and what they're not. And this helps other states. I want other advocates in other states, and I know a few of them out there that are already digging, but everybody needs to dig in and go back, look through the archives, find out any positive legislation they got killed by any interference from big tobacco, because this could roll the whole thing back across the country. And we're in a good position now. We have the Triton case. We're waiting to hear on that probably June, July before the Supreme Court cites with that. We have I'm going to say it. We got a hella hardcore, excellent leader now at the HHS at the federal level with RFK Jr. I think some heads are going to roll. I think we're on the positive side of this, and hopefully it wakes everybody up.
Fantastic. Well, Martin, do you want to close out with your, what you sit there and
Well,
always
yeah,
say?
he just said, yeah, on the positive side, we're on the side of the angels, as we always are. No, I would just like to say, Ron, that one thing that is quite a theme with these shows is we always say to consumers, if you don't like what's happening, you've got to speak up. You've got to get involved, write to your representative, and you're doing it with bells on. You're really getting stuck in there. So, yeah, if you're a consumer, don't just sit there and moan about it. Do something about it, because people are the most important voice in this. We're the most affected by these laws, and we should be making our voice heard and speaking up about it. So, well done, Ron, and everyone should follow your lead.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And by all means, I mean, if I'm gonna give credit to my wife too, because she deals with me dealing with this, and she absolutely hates politics, but she's got a voice on her. I tell you, I've had a few people up there say she needs to run. I'd love to have her on my committee and all that. And she shakes her head and says no. I mean, but yeah, she can definitely stir the pot on social media, in case you haven't noticed. So
That would be Deanna for our viewers. So, well, thank you. Thank you, Representative, for joining us. Thank you, viewers, for listening, or viewers and listeners for watching our latest episode of Across the Pond podcast. If you've got suggestions on guests, feel free to reach out to me, and stay tuned to future episodes. Thanks.